Hello everyone and welcome to the next video of the channel. I've been waiting to post this one for a while now, but I kind of got wrapped up in some stuff, so it kind of got delayed and pushed back a week. But here I am and here it is. I really didn't want to go and do too much Berserk stuff, as I kind of feel like my channel is going to be more of a I jump around and cover just about everything. I don't really want to stay on one topic for too long. And a topic that I hear very little about, surprisingly, in the power scaling community is dealing with Shin Megami Tensei, which I think is a really cool JRPG series that is kind of a cult classic. While I don't think all of the games are great, I think there is definitely a couple hit notes in there that people should definitely try out. In my opinion, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, or the third installment of the series, is by and large my favorite. And today I wanted to go over a little bit of the power scaling of the main character and my personal favorite SMT character, Demi-fiend. For those who don't know what SMT is, it's essentially, well, how do I even get into this? SMT is a hard series to describe. There's plenty that goes on here, but I'm going to try to dumb it down the best I can. There could be an entire video in and of itself talking about just the nuance in the world of SMT, and I'm going to let you guys play the games and figure that out for yourself, so I'm almost going to kind of dumb things down and cover it in base here. SMT is a game where you follow a human being who is basically traveling across the supernatural world. Generally some kind of apocalypse hits that brings all sorts of spirits and entities based off of religious figures into your real world. SMT Nocturne is no different. The main character gets swallowed up into an apocalyptic situation, saved by his teacher, but later gets turned into a half-demon by Lucifer. You are the Demi-fiend. You're stuck in this post-apocalyptic world full of spirits and people who basically just want you dead, and you're forced to make a choice on where this world goes and ultimately what happens to this hellish world. Demi-fiend is an extremely powerful character. There's plenty of people who've documented all sorts of different things on the SMT universe and why it scales so highly. I'll link one of those in the description where somebody summarizes it in way more detail than I could ever fully describe. But SMT is full of some really powerful supernatural figures. Not only that, there is a metric ton of abilities. When it comes to Demi-fiend being the avatar character, he has the choice to possess dozens upon dozens of abilities. I'm mostly just going to be doing the summarization of Demi-fiend's abilities. I can't go into literally everything he has, or else we'd be here for, honestly, hours on end. To understand how strong Demi-fiend is, we need to talk about somebody he beat, and that's Kagetsuchi. In the SMT world, essentially there is a great force that controls all timelines and all things, and this is a great force of order known as the Great Will. It goes by a bunch of different names, often taking the names of religious deities across numerous religions. In Nocturne, it's called Kagetsuchi. Kagetsuchi is equal to other faces of the Great Will, and that's pretty important, as the Great Will is essentially an omnipotent, omnipresent being that the entire SMT cosmology and world is essentially based on. Just fragments of his personality are some of the strongest beings in the entire verse, such as Lucifer and Satan. And Demi-fiend can square up with one of this guy's avatars. The avatars aren't as strong as his true full self, but even just a fragment of his piece is able to completely reconstruct the world and is significantly stronger than any being in the SMT world, barring maybe like the main characters because they're messiahs. Kagetsuchi should scale above just about every spirit from the game that you can possess. This includes Shiva, who in SMT5 with a little bit of prep time can literally nuke the entire universe. We know characters like the Four Heavenly Kings have a higher dimensional existence than that of our normal world, and this only scales higher. When you scale up to the power of Kagetsuchi, Lucifer, and Shiva, characters on that tier, you basically begin to transcend dimensions entirely and go into a tier of what we call Outerversal. What you want to consider true Outerversal is kind of hard to describe. Once again, there's plenty of people who can explain it better than I can, and I will link those in the description. Outerversal is kind of hard to describe, but the best way I can try to explain it is, when you think of dimensionality, we all exist in the third dimension, and the fourth dimension, which is highly theorized to be time, is the dimension above us. For something to be fourth dimensional, it would have to be infinitely greater than something three-dimensional. This is already an insane jump in power. The strongest third-dimensional being would not even become close to the power that is something that's in the fourth dimension. And this applies once again to something in the fifth dimension and the sixth to the fourth and fifth. Any time there's a jump in dimensions, that being is quite literally infinitely greater than the being below it. Why this is so crazy is because beings like Kagetsuchi, Lucifer, and Shiva just transcend dimensions. They can't be literally listed on the list of dimensions as far as it goes. They sit in a world of information within the tree of life. Kagetsuchi's true body and the greater great will as a whole actually just transcends the idea of it. Now I know there's people out there who are probably going to try to refute the idea that SMT's top tiers reach Outerversal level. They might try to downplay it as being low complex multiversal, or even multiversal, but this is just not the case. As you can see from the Quantum Devil Saga novels, characters can blatantly transcend dimensions entirely, which would quantify for Outerversal scaling, and the characters that perform these feats are blatantly much lower than the characters that Demi-fiend fights by his endgame, such as Beelzebub, Metatron, and Lucifer. A common retort I hear about Demi-fiend not being scaled with the top tiers of the verse is that Lucifer was holding back against him in their final fight, and that Kagetsuchi does not scale to the other faces of the Great Will. I find these takes a little baffling. There's little to no evidence to suggest this, but people will say it anyway. For Lucifer, him holding back just doesn't make any sense at all. He sends fiends to fight you throughout the whole game to test you, and they have the full intent of killing you in their battles. Why suddenly would his final test against him would he just suddenly hold back and not try to kill you as all the other minions of his did? That just seems out of character and extremely unlikely. As for Kagetsuchi not being as strong as the other faces of the Great Will, this is also just blatantly wrong. They're literally stated to be one and the same in an interview, and so this honestly doesn't make any sense either. Demi-fiend is strong enough to fight Kagetsuchi in a one-on-one battle for the stake of the entire universe. When Kagetsuchi fights him, especially in the True Demon ending, we see that when Demi-fiend doesn't choose to have the world recreated and essentially just destroy everything, after killing Kagetsuchi, the entire world, universe, and everything being held in it disappears. It's just a void of blackness only inhabited by Lucifer. This entire space becomes blackness, which would encompass all the spirits that you could have encountered, including, like I said before, Shiva, who is casually nuking other SMT universes with prep time. Later on, Demi-fiend would grow even stronger. Demi-fiend becomes sort of like the boogeyman of SMT. Anybody who's played Digital Devil Saga or SMT5 can tell you, he's literally the super boss of the game. He's meant to be seen as stronger than even the final bosses, and something you kind of have to do insane prep time for. Demi-fiend is so nuts in those games that if you don't follow the pattern, he'll just one-shot you with one of his super moves. And you can't even survive these. It doesn't matter how much you train or whatever. Demi-fiend will always have a move that one-shots you. Gaia's Rage in DDS, and Chaotic Will in SMT5. Demi-fiend's speed is naturally immeasurable. Once you get into 4th to 5th dimensional tier, generally a character who gets measured in speed is distance over time, but when you take the time out of the equation, there's nothing to really measure. These characters are called immeasurable, or just incomprehensible. Speed doesn't matter to them, and in this matchup, Demi-fiend's speed is more or less just completely pointless to measure. Anybody who transcends the 4th dimension is generally going to be above this tier of speed, and thus above speed entirely. I'm going to go summarize in brief some of his abilities. Keep in mind, this is a very, very tiny portion. I wanted to go over more, but once again, I didn't want to go and talk too long. So, with his Makisato Magatama, he's able to negate tons of different elements, from physical to fire to all sorts of things. The only thing that could really hit him is like Almighty and things with Pierce. And even then, these are really rare. Also, when we're talking about him negating fire and such, he isn't just getting hit with normal fire in his games, he's getting hit with archetypal fire from very powerful spirits. So, it's definitely a very high tier resistance to nearly every type of damage. He has subjective reality and passive extreme reality warping and fate causality manipulation because of his abilities as a messiah. Characters like this are chosen to essentially oppose the Great Will and have the ability to work against his order. This means any sort of massive fate manipulation, causality manipulation, anything that focuses on manipulation of time or actions is basically going to be completely ineffective against Demi-fiend. Despite the fact that the Great Will is insanely strong, even stronger than Demi-fiend actually, there's no way that he can control Demi-fiend's actions, which means Demi-fiend possesses insane levels of fate resistance. He has access to numerous elemental abilities, everything from fire to ice to light and darkness, access to elements like almighty spells, which completely pierce through resistances in his game. They can even be seen as existence erasure. Demi-fiend also has the ability to tag and fight conceptual beings. On further than that, other SMT characters that are weaker than Demi-fiend can interact with and fight beings that simply don't exist at all. No, I'm not being hyperbole here. They can literally fight things that do not exist. Demi-fiend's regeneration and immortality is just downright insane. He can survive being blasted by Megami alone. With certain abilities, he's even able to stay alive or regenerate through these kinds of attacks, which flat out eradicate the soul. Some existences even wipe you from conception. His regeneration can likely be seen as high godly, as he doesn't even need a concept to live. He can be completely wiped from the face of existence and still come back. Demi-fiend also has access to abilities such as true immortality, acausality, regeneration negation, and I'm just naming a few. This video was originally supposed to be a versus matchup where I'd find someone to fight Demi-fiend, but I couldn't find any that I really knew or was invested in. I'm not saying Demi-fiend is stronger than everything in fiction, far from it. He's not even the strongest character in a series, but for what it's worth, he is a stupidly powerful character. Many people like to hype up characters like Goku and Superman, and honestly, Demi-fiend is up there. You could argue that he beats both of them, and I wouldn't even really be that concerned. Demi-fiend just has so much versatility with his abilities. SMT has been a series that's been running for over 30 years, and with each game adding to the lore and abilities, Demi-fiend really only seems to get stronger. With that being said, that'll be the end of the video. I didn't want to go into insane depth on Demi-fiend's powers. If you wanted a more in-depth analysis on SMT scaling, using the links I provided below, I can certainly do that. I think this is just one of those series that's so complicated and hard to explain. If I really went into all the depth, we would literally be here for over an hour. I just wanted to give you guys a brief taste of what SMT scaling is like from one of my favorite characters in video games. So if you guys liked it, make sure to stay around, and I'll be willing to do more if you guys ask for it. I'll catch you guys later, and I hope you guys have a nice day. Peace.